Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Catherine Helm, and I am a couples therapist. I am talking with Maya, the baby millennial, today for a series that we're going to call Breaking Cupid's Arrow. Hey, Maya.
Hey, hello, hello.
Hello. So today we're going to talk about polyamory.
Ooh, not my least favorite.
You said your least favorite?
Well, least familiar. I've heard of it, but I'm not as familiar with it.
It seems
Polyamory, or consensual non-monogamy, involves multiple intimate relationships, romantic or sexual, with the full consent of all parties. It is not gender-specific, allowing anyone to have partners of any gender.
it seems to be a growing trend.
For
What have you
sure.
heard about it?
I know that the majority of New York City, especially Brooklyn, seem to be polyamorous nowadays.
Why?
I think it's easy. I think it's easier for people. The apps can always bring people to you, so easy to bring people in and out of your relationship.
And what are your friends saying, or what are people engaging in polyamory? Like, what are they saying about it?
I'm getting mixed feelings. I have some friends who are blessed with monogamy, some friends who are blessed with polyamory, but all seem to be having troubles on both sides of the street.
You know what's interesting? So, as a couples therapist, I've seen all kinds of couples, right, for many, many years. And I saw the occasional polyamorous couple. And now I seem to be getting more of an influx of polyamorous couples. And I'm in Chicago, right? And you're in the New York. But more and more on my caseload, I'm seeing polyamorous couples
And of all ages,
of all ages, but it tends to be more in your 30ish, late 20s, early 30ish kind of time frame.
interesting. Do you see that polyamorous couples that are healthy?
Well, okay, that's a good question, right? And I think it depends on how we define health. And remember, as a couples therapist, I typically see couples who are in distress,
Mm,
right? And so one of the things that I'm seeing in my practice is couples who are really struggling with changing boundaries in their.
interesting.
Yeah. What's the word on the street? What are you seeing?
Well, can someone become polyamorous? Can you start off monogamous and become polyamorous? Is this like
Yeah.
an evolution?
Well, I don't know if it's an evolution, but I think it's definitely a growing trend. And
Hmm,
I think people are, kind of pushing against the norms of monogamy. And this, of course, is not everybody, but, and people are like, well, why don't we try it? But here's some of the problems. What happens if you have kind of this monogamous relationship and then you open it up and let's say you bring a third person in because they're all different kinds of monogamy. And like one issue is the person is into both of the kind of, let's call it the primary relationship. And then all of a sudden they stop being attracted to one of the people in the relationship and not the other person in the relationship.
sounds like you break up.
Do you though? What if the person in the primary relationship wants the third party to stay in the relationship, but then the other primary partner does not?
Do they become secondary? Can you do you change the pieces? Who moves?
Right. So these are some of the things I'm seeing in practice.
Is ooh.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it?
It is. It sounds tough. It sounds like you have to have a lot of communication, a lot of boundaries, and be on a lot of the same page, which I do not see in a lot of couples. Myself.
Well, I think you bring up a good point, right? So relationships in general take a lot of negotiation and clear communication, and people struggle with that from time to time. Then when we add more people into a relationship, there are some couples who do polyamory well, right? And then there are a lot of couples who struggle with that. I think you have to have emotional maturity. I think you have to have very clear boundaries. I think you have to be able to be honest about feelings like jealousy and insecurity. And most people aren't.
I was gonna say I don't see that in most monogamous couples, let alone polyamorous couples. But does that mean if you can't do it in monogamy, should you not do it in polyamory? Is it a no go?
A great question. And I don't know, right? Sort of when couples come to me, I don't judge them. I just kind of help them sort out their stuff. But I think that, I think they're not societal structures that support polyamory in the United States, except in certain kind of pockets. And there are not a lot of public models of how to have healthy polyamorous relationships. And I think that people struggle with a lot of basic skills in their relationships. And then when you add sort of a polyamorous context, it just makes it harder. Some people do it well, but some people don't do it well.
That's fair. As a friend of polyamorous people, what advice can you give me to support my friends?
Oh, that's a good question. So I think pre getting into a polyamorous relationship, you have to kind of be clear, what are your motivations for doing so, right? And where your own spots of vulnerability, your own insecurities, right? And polyamorous is about open, loving relationships, consensual non-monogamy. And you want to make sure that your other partner is on the same page as you. Like, these are the things that we want. This is why. This is what we hope to achieve, right? You have to be very open and honest. So I would tell your friends, like, be open and honest about why you're doing it and what you want from it. Really kind of check in with yourself and check in with all of the people involved. And I think start slow, like open the relationship up slowly, and maybe add one partner at a time, or, whether it's the one person with the two primary people. And I don't mean to imply a hierarchy, because it depends on how one decides to do polyamorous relationships. Or maybe each of you have, a relationship and you have your primary relationship. So it just depends on so many things. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I've been in relationships where I thought it was monogamous and it started off, and then it's become non-monogamous, but then that's usually when I end it.
Well, because it was non-monogamous without your permission, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's just cheating, girl.
That's what I would call it.
Right? I just call that cheating or dishonesty. But in polyamory, it's not about doing things behind your partner's back. It's about sort of, this is, the culture of our relationship, and it's open at certain times or open all of the time, and we communicate, and some polyamorous couples, sort of, they have a primary emotional connection with each other, and then just kind of they use other partners to bring in force. But then for other couples, it's about sort of polyamory, multiple loving connections where everybody's connected as a family. And so they're all different types of polyamory. I'm still learning too.
That's fair. It sounds like it has multiple genres, multiple books still being written.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're seeing it, since you're baby millennial here? Do you feel like you're seeing this more as a millennial thing? It's always existed, but I think people are being more open about it.
I think I'm seeing it a lot in millennials in their 30s. I also get the occasional Gen Zer who reaches out to me, which is always off-putting, and they are loving the ethical non-monogamy. They are loving the polyamory. Well, I would say that they're exploring. I think that everyone's having their growing pains, but people seem to be more open to it in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah. And do you think when people get older that they stop being open to it, or they just go undercover with it?
I think it would be better, to be honest. I think that, like, you've been in an established relationship for longer, like you have like more established boundaries, you probably have a better, hopefully have a better sense of communication based on longevity. So then you'd
Girl,
be
I
open to
wouldn't make
more
that
affection.
assumption. I wouldn't make that assumption. I got couples who are been together 30 years that are splitting up because of the communication issues and all of
Well, then they probably definitely shouldn't try polyamory.
that. I think that's true.
They should try separation.
Men are, which is why they're coming to me. But you bring up a really good point, right? And this is something that I've noticed in some of the polyamorous couples I've been working with. Right. So if you've been in a relationship with somebody a long time, let's say 5 years, 10, 20, whatever, and then you decide to open up, you are now comparing a earlier relationship, one where there's all the passion and all of that stuff, and maybe someone you don't have to pay bills with, which is not hot, with somebody you've been with 20 years, and there is no comparison, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're coming back to your primary partner and going, hey, why aren't you cuddling with me? Like, or where's the passion? There's no comparison. And that's the problem.
Yeah. The passion might have clocked out at year 10.
The passion may have clocked out at year two.
I was trying to be generous. I was trying to be hopeful. I have to make it past the year two, then I'll start to decide.
Yeah. I wonder if it's a growing trend.
The polyamory. I think it makes it easier. People have more access to more people. I think that especially when you add in like the distance of relationships, I think that's especially when polyamory can start to feel like a viable option.
What do you mean?
So if you're in a long distance relationship, you may have a primary partner in the place that you live. You may
Yeah.
have additional partners, well, either in your city or in a different area, or you might be in a long distance relationship with your primary partner, and then you have a boundary where you can have more casual relationships in your city, but not when your significant other is in town, depending on
Yeah.
what you're comfortable with.
I think you bring up another important point is sometimes people struggle with kind of relational stress with the amount of time. More partners that you add, the more people you have to spend time with. And then people feel like it's unbalanced, right? Like you're spending more time with this partner versus this partner, and that can be a real relational strain in polyamorous relationships.
That's
There's
fair.
always a comparison.
Yeah. Especially if you want to go non-hierarchical, because it's hard. How do you not have a hierarchy in your life?
Yeah. Well, and so, I mean, I think some couples do it, but they have to be, I think you have to be emotionally mature. You have to sort of have high emotional intelligence. You have to be self aware and good at negotiating the constantly changing boundaries.
I
And
forgot
then
the
what
boundaries can
happens?
change.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just forgot that boundaries can change.
They always change. I think they always change when you add new partners or you break up with partners. Don't you think?
Yeah, yeah. Or life experiences.
That's right. Right. So I think that, polyamory is an option for people who are open to that, but you really have to be very, very clear. And then, if it's something that you're comfortable with and you want to try and you do that for a while and then things change for you and you're no longer comfortable with that and you don't want that, you have to be clear that with your partner. Because to continue to go along with something that you don't want to do anymore breeds resentment, emotional disconnection, and a lot of things.
That's true.
What
Mhm.
else is on your mind about this, Maya?
Should polyamory, is it public? Is it private? Is it something you share with your friends and family? Or is it something that you just keep with you and your partners?
Well, that's a great question. Right. And so I think there's still a lot of discrimination out there against polyamorous couples, and people see it as kind of being all about sex as opposed to, sort of a lifestyle or kind of an identity, right? Or how people choose to live their lives or their families. And so, unfortunately, I think people still have to be careful about who they choose to reveal that to, unless you're in a community, and there are a few communities that support polyamory where you can be open in your relationship. I don't think it's necessarily fair, right? People are grown, right? This is what you want to do. But, unfortunately, I don't think we've evolved yet.
That's fair. People miss the consensual and they just hear different.
I agree, right? People miss the consensual part that this is what two adults have agreed to. Um, there is some research that suggests that polyamorous couples who do it well without a hierarchy, like people who identify as being women, tend to feel more embraced
Hmm,
and tend to feel more egalitarian. Isn't that interesting?
that is.
Mm-hmm. Kind
Hmm,
of turning traditional gender roles on their head.
hmm. I can see it being very supportive for that.
Yeah,
Allows you like the freedom to explore, less societal obligations, less gender structures.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I don't know. It continues to evolve. I mean, I guess I'll let you know the more polyamorous couples that sort of end up on my caseload. I hope they learn from me, but I definitely learn from them. I mean, I learn from all my couples.
No, that makes sense. I will be learning from my polyamorous friends. I was cursed with monogamy, so I will continue to ride this curse.
So you want to hear about polyamory, and are open to hearing about it, but that's as far as it goes.
I don't think that my communication has evolved for me to be a successful polyamorous person.
Fair, fair. And I will just say, to make it general, I think all of us could use a little help in our relationships. So,
That's fair. That's what I have you for.
well, thank you for talking to me today about polyamory.
Of course, of course. Always happy to have a chat. Always happy to talk about what Cupid said was yes or right.
All right, so we will move on.
Yep.